Welcome back. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about odd time signatures. Now, in my experience, when I ask a student to play an odd time signature, more often than not, the second I say, okay, 7, 8, go, their brains start to explode. Now, what if I was to tell you there's a way to think about odd time signatures that makes it not so complicated? In other words, you don't have to overthink it. You can actually play it and execute it, and it feels just as good as if you're playing in a common time, like say 4/4. Now, that's what this video is going to explore next, so let's get into it. Now, before we get started, if you're new to this channel and you really want to up your drumming game, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. That way I'll be able to let you know exactly when new lessons are coming out. So as I'm shooting this video, we are actually in the midst of dealing with the coronavirus. So it certainly is an odd time. So that being said, I thought it would be a pretty cool idea to do a lesson on odd times. Now, whenever I start talking about odd time signatures with students, there just seems to be this stigma that connects odd time signatures with complicated. First of all, what is an odd time signature? For those of you that don't know, an odd time signature is any time signature where the top number is an odd number. That means every measure has an odd number of counts. Now, when I say odd number, I'm talking more about numbers like 5, 7, 9, 11. Yes, I know 3 is an odd number, but 3 tends to feel round and it's also a very common time signature. So in general, we don't consider that an odd time signature. So for this video, we're just going to focus on time signatures like 5, 8, 7, 8, and 9, 8. Now, just for argument's sake, I'm going to start with the 7, 8 time signature. 7, 8 time signature means that there's 7 beats to a measure, and the 8th note gets the beat. So that means every measure has to add up to 7 8th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, for the most part, that's how most people count odd time signatures, like a 7, 8. But here's the challenge with that, especially if the tempo's a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Drummers tend to have all these numbers in their head, and it's very easy to get lost in the number. And even if you don't screw that up, what tends to happen is you sound robotic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, when you're playing inside a 7, 8 time signature, you're gonna get this feeling of the beat skipping. So it's gonna feel like the measure kind of ends a little early. But the challenge is drummers tend to overcomplicate this. They overthink it. Now, what if I was to tell you there's a way of making this so much simpler in your mind? And that's what it all comes down to. If you could simplify this in your mind, then your playing is gonna sound and feel so much more natural. If you listen to drummers like Fenichel or Dennis Chambers, whenever they play some kind of an odd time signature, it doesn't have that very disjointed, overthinking type of vibe when they're playing. It tends to be smooth and just kind of flows over the time very naturally. And I guarantee you the reason for that is because of how they think about it. And they don't overcomplicate it in their mind. So the way I approach it is like this. What is the most comfortable time signature to play in? Common time, 4/4. So my question to you becomes, how do we take a time signature like 7, 8 and relate it or make it feel more like 4/4? Well, to do that, let's first analyze 7, 8 and see how different it really is from 4/4. And as it turns out, 7, 8 and 4/4 are almost identical. They're virtually the same thing. Now, I know I probably lost you there, because how could 7, 8 and 4/4 remotely be the same thing? Well, let's go ahead and break down 7, 8. 7, 8 is 7 over 8. The top number, the 7, tells you how many counts or beats are in each measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The bottom number is going to tell you what kind of note gets the value of a beat. And if it's an 8 on the bottom, we know that 8th notes get the beat. An easy way to remember that is just to take away the 7 on top and replace it with a 1. The fraction you get is 1/8. Ergo, the 8th note gets the beat. So that means if I was to play on top of the beat, these would be 8th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good, so we have 7 8th notes in the measure. Now, likewise, let's write out one measure of 4/4. 4/4, which is common time, means that there's 4 quarter notes to the measure. The top number, which is a 4, tells you how many counts there are. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bottom number is going to tell you what kind of note receives the beat. Replace the 4 on top with a 1, you get 1/4 or 1/4. So that means the quarter note gets the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so notice I played those at 2 different tempos, and they seem to have very different feels. So here's what we're gonna do. Let's take that measure of 4/4 and count it in eighth notes. So it's still 1, 2, 3, 4, but we're gonna play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So all I've done is I've separated that measure of 4/4 into its eighth notes. So there's a total of 8 eighth notes that fill up a measure of 4/4 time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. What if we were to go ahead and double each of the numbers in that time signature? So instead of 4/4, we'll change the time signature to 8/8. Now 8/8 and 4/4 are the exact same time signature. The only difference is how you count it. 8/8 would mean that there's 8 counts in every measure and the eighth note gets the beat. So at the same tempo, instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now if you think about it, that's the way dancers tend to count off, right? 5, 6, 7, 8. Dancing tends to be counted in 8/8 instead of 4/4. And 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other, they both mean the same thing. So if 4/4 and 8/8 are the exact same time signature, how different is 8/8 from 7/8? Now for all you math wizards out there, what's 8 minus 7? That's right, 1. So there's only 1 eighth note difference between 8/8 and 7/8. So by that logic, doesn't that mean that there's only 1 eighth note difference between 4/4 and 7/8? Doesn't that also mean that 4/4 is only 1 eighth note away from 7/8? Well, yes, it does. So now, if you're used to feeling time as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that feels comfortable to you, how would we equate that into 7/8, but still with that 4/4 vibe that we're comfortable with? Well, simply all you need to do is take away 1 eighth note. And the last eighth note in the measure would be the end of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 end. So the end of 4 is gone. We're going to take that away. So now we're left with 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1. The faster your head is moving, the more you're counting, the faster numbers are going by, the less you're going to be able to just play and express yourself and feel the space in between the beats. This way, you still feel that space, just like you do in 4/4 time, you're just taking away the very last eighth note. Now, the other thing that I find that this tends to open up is your idea of being able to play fills. It's a little more convoluted to think of all your different rhythmic choices when you're playing in 7/8, especially when those numbers are going by fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. It starts getting very hard to figure out. But when you think of this more as a 4/4 type of feeling, you have the same rhythm choices that you're normally used to. It's all about how you think about it. And if you overthink it, sometimes you could lock yourself into a cage. So the whole idea behind this whole way of thinking is to take yourself out of that cage. So here's what we're gonna do. Let's play the 7/8, but feel it with a 4/4 vibe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now what I'm gonna do next is play a little bit in 7/8, and I'm gonna trade off between doing some groove time and some fills. I'm gonna keep this in a 4-bar phrase, so it's gonna be 3 bars of 7/8 groove, followed by 1 bar of fill. Each time I get to the fill on the 4th bar, I'm going to replace that fill with 1 rhythm from the rhythm chart. It'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and drop the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and a 3, and a 3, and a 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, Now this is a perfect exercise because it really starts getting you familiar with all the different rhythm choices that you have inside of that 7/8 or odd time feeling. And if you're unfamiliar with the table of time and you're not quite sure what that means, make sure to visit thedrummersalmanac.com and take my Drumming Foundation Challenge. And here's a link right there. But because you're feeling that 7/8 with a 4/4 vibe to it, this is gonna really open up your vocabulary. Now it does take a lot of practice. You gotta sit there and do this a lot. And also I would change it up in terms of, instead of just doing, say, 3 bars time, 1 bar fill, I'd do things like, say, trading 4s. Now I just gave you the example of 7/8, because 7/8 to me relates very closely to 4/4. So for me, it's one of the easiest odd time signatures to work inside. But what if you're dealing with something, say, like 5/8, or maybe something like a 9/8? Now I like to think of 5/8 a couple of different ways. You could either think of it as relating closer to 6/8, which is a more common time signature. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. So 5/8 would be 6/8 minus 1/8 note. And you could practice it while trying to maintain that 6/8 vibe, which is a very comfortable feeling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. The other way you could think of a 5/8 is like 3/4, if you don't want your brain to move that fast and you don't have to get that round 6/8 vibe. So 3/4 would be a 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. But you're going to take away that last 8th note. But when you do it like that, again, it slows down your brain. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And it gets a little more round. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And I recommend you do it the exact same way, either trading 4s or going through the table of time inside of the 5/8 type of vibe. Now 9/8 is a little trickier because it's like 4/4 plus an 8th note. And the way I feel that one's a little more convoluted. I actually feel it like 5/4, but I take away the end of 5. And if you feel that inside of a quarter note pulse, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. I know that's a little weird, but let's check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, and a 4, and a 5, 1. Now this approach works for a lot of time signatures, and it can really make things a lot simpler if you just work on it and you get used to feeling it that way. But the biggest thing you have to realize when you're practicing inside of odd time signatures is to not let it get overcomplicated in your head. Always try to think how that time signature relates back to something you're already comfortable with. Remember, odd time signatures are generally only 1/8 note away from even time signatures. So with that in mind, it doesn't have to be quite as complicated as you think it is. And of course, the biggest challenge I see with students is that they're self-defeated. The second we start talking about odd time signatures, they immediately jump into this vibe of, this is too hard for me. This is more complicated than I can handle. Those negative thought patterns, those negative beliefs, they shackle you. They put you in a box. So the first step to any of this is to realize that this stuff is not as complicated as you're making it, and you can do it. It all depends on how you think about it. Okay, so that's gonna wrap up this lesson. Now I'd love to know your thoughts on odd time signatures. So if you have a trick or you have a secret for playing odd time signatures, let me know in the comments. Now as always, if you got something out of this video and you feel like you learned something, do me a favor and give the video a like. All those likes tend to add up and tell YouTube, hey, this is a channel worth paying attention to. Another way you can support the channel is by spreading the word. If you feel like you know a drummer that could benefit from it, go ahead and share this to your social media. The more you share, the more the word gets out. And finally, I come up with a new lesson each week, so if you're new to the channel, definitely subscribe and ring the notification bell. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, these are indeed odd times. So take care of yourself, stay healthy, and stay safe. Thanks so much for checking out the video, and remember, as always, practice with purpose. Now, if you want to dig a little bit deeper into your foundation, Visit my website, thedrummersalmanac.com. For a limited time, I'm offering something called the Drumming Foundation Challenge. This is an in-depth video quiz. I mean, you could even call it a course because it's about 10 videos deep. It's not for the faint of heart. In fact, most drummers completely crash and burn when they go through this. Now that might seem like a scary thing, but you know what? If it could really kick your butt and it's all about foundation, think about how good your foundation will be if you can get through it. So I challenge you to visit thedrummersalmanac.com, join my mailing list, and take the Drumming Foundation Challenge. Let's see how good your foundation really is.